So the one part we haven't looked at yet is the kind of main overarching area where you can track all of the Qof activity, both achieved and yet to be done for the practice. That's in the reporting section, and it's Qof Indicators. So in this area we've got a breakdown of every register under Qof, and inside each one of these we've got a breakdown of each indicator with how many patients have been achieved, how many patients are missing or the work has yet to be done, a percentage based on those figures, and how many points have been achieved. Now you need to make sure you're looking at the correct screen here. We're looking at how am I driving, but what we should be doing at this time of year is looking at end of year. Now this relates back to the initial point I made in part 1, which was setting the Qof alerts to end of year. We need to make sure we're looking at end of year in this section as well, because the figures could be different between how am I driving and end of year. End of year basically means that the dates that are referenced are the 31st of March. So what we can do is look at a particular register. If we look at asthma, we can see on SystmOne, which is just the main register, there are 7 patients. Now there are only 17 patients registered in this entire demo system, so the figures aren't going to be very realistic. But there are 7 patients with asthma in this practice. Now if we look down at asthma 2, measures of variability and reversibility, there's 3 in total, which is the figure on the right hand side, and there's 3 which have been achieved, which is the figure on the left hand side. So we've achieved 3 out of 3, we've got 100%, and we've got all of the points for it. Now the reason why this doesn't say 3 out of 7, because there are 7 patients in the register, is because 4 of those patients will have been excluded for some reason. And we can have a look at the excluded patients in a moment. So the same thing applies to asthma 3. There are 6 patients, so that means that 1 of them has been excluded. And for asthma 4, 5 of these patients will have been excluded. So what we can do, if we choose asthma 3 for example, that's got some achieved and some missing, you can right click on that indicator and we can do show achieved patients. Now there's not really anything you can do in here because the work has been done for this patient, but we can see that Derek Jones has had the work done. He's had an asthma review recorded. Now we can close, we can right click on the same area and we can do show missing patients. Now this is going to be more useful so you can identify who you need to target to record the work for this particular indicator. So we've got 5 patients here who all need a review for asthma 3. Now this is a list in SystmOne, so there are various different actions you can do in one fell swoop for these patients. We can select all of them either by clicking and dragging or clicking this dotted square up here. We can then right click on the list and then we've got an actions menu. Now the relevant actions in here, if you want to contact the patients, will be to send SMS message down here. What we can also do is print integrated word letters if you want to send a letter to all of them. Whatever action you choose in this menu will be applied to everyone in that list. So for example, if you wanted to send them a text, all 5 patients would get whatever text you choose. What you can also do is set one-off script message in here. That will let you type in a message that will appear on the patient's next prescription. So whoever prints off that patient's prescription will be alerted to the fact, if I type in Qof, that message will appear on the prescription. So they'll be alerted to the fact that there's Qof work that needs doing for this patient, and as they hand it over to the patient, they may want to actually book an appointment for that patient to capture the Qof work. And again, that will apply to all 5 patients in that list. So if I close this area again, if you want to see a little bit more information about the patients, we can right click and do breakdown missing patients. So what you're effectively doing here is adding columns into that previous report to show more data. We've got areas that we can add on the left. So if I go into demographics, we could, for example, add age, we could add ethnicity, We could add email address, telephone number's already selected, and we could put user's mobile in as well. So if we close the breakdown now, do right click and show missing patients again, we've now got those extra columns in our table. So we could quickly find out who's got an email address, who needs a phone number recorded, who has a mobile number. So we know that only these bottom two patients would actually get a text message if we chose the text messaging option I showed you before. Now you can also explore each report by right-clicking and clicking on Indicator Details. Now in here you can get a proper breakdown of exactly what the report is looking for. You also get the numerators, denominators, and also the exclusions in one big list with the number of patients on the right hand side. Now what you don't get in here is the actual codes that the report is looking for. What you can do though, if you close, you can go into report information, and then you actually get a breakdown kind of blow by blow of what the actual report is looking for. So you can follow the tree or follow the chart along and find out exactly what the search contains. However, this is quite a long-winded process. I would recommend sticking to the Qof timeline because it's a much easier way of finding out exactly what criteria need to be satisfied to achieve a patient on a particular indicator. Now, I mentioned the excluded patients before. What you can do is click on excluded patients. We were looking at asthma before, so if I use asthma 3 again, I can tell that one patient is excluded. So on the previous report it said 1 out of 6 was achieved. Now it didn't say 1 out of 7 because one of those patients is excluded, and we can see that corresponds here, so we can see 1. Now that is because of the registration date of the patient. It says XRED-DAT, and it's because they were registered in the last 3 months, so that excludes them from that register. So you can, depending on what register you're looking at, you can find exclusion reasons and how many patients there are in this screen. Now another useful area in here is target patients on the left. Now this will display the number of patients of your choosing with the highest number of alerts. So what we can do is switch over to end of financial year, like we've been doing the whole way along. You can show the top or the maximum of 50 patients with the highest number of alerts, and only show patients with 5 or any number you choose outstanding alerts or more. I'm just going to change that to 3 just to demonstrate, and then we click refresh. And the list down here changes to reflect the changes you've made. So it orders them by alerts. Let's just click that again to get the highest at the top. So we can see that Fred Blogs has the highest number of alerts out of any of the patients at the practice, and we can see those alerts here. So this is all the work that is outstanding for the patient. There's also a valuation on the right hand side, which is a rough valuation of how much money would be brought in if all of this work was satisfied. It's not 100% correct. It's based on last year's Qof data, so I wouldn't use it as gospel, but it's a rough kind of guide as to how valuable each patient is. Now the reason that one of these is saying 0 is because all of these alerts are for indicators which have already been 100% achieved, so there's no more kind of cash value for the work that's outstanding for these patients. But from a kind of care sense, you would still want to bring this patient in because they have 6 alerts outstanding. So the last area I want to look at in this tutorial is in reporting. It's in the Qof Tools section, and it's Qof Work to Do. This is another way of identifying patients who you could prioritise. We can break down the report by which individual register and also which individual indicator inside the registers themselves. So I've got everything selected here. We can choose nothing by selecting the dotted line with the dotted box with the red line. I could just choose asthma, for example, and then click on Run Report. And then here are the patients that need work doing in any of the asthma registers. Now I can see here that they're all on asthma 3, and I can see who they are and various other bits of information. Now I can choose other indicators as well, and then click Run Report. So I'm still just seeing asthma 03, so all of those other indicators must be 100% achieved. Now what I can do on the right hand side here, there's a few columns that are very useful. The first of them is uses mobile, so I can see from here who uses, or which of these patients uses a mobile phone, so I know that I can contact them via text message. And even more importantly, the last column along is appointment booked. So I can see which of these patients already has an appointment at some point in the future, so you know that you don't need to call them in. You could focus on the ones who don't have an appointment booked to capture their Qof data.